Good afternoon. I'm here at DTECH today with Eric Easton from CenterPoint, one of our valuable customers, and Rob Brook from Neara. And wanted to talk a little bit about, the partnership we have both with Neara and CenterPoint. Osmose is a services company. We're always trying to help a customer to buy down their risk every time we roll a truck. And, we would say, Eric, CenterPoint, from our perspective, have best-in-class programs for your distribution network with your wood poles and your underground network with your cable life extension program. But we're always trying to make it better. And, I think what's unique for us right now in our industry is how we're pivoting to use data to provide an even smarter service going forward. And we want to make sure every time we roll a piece of equipment for you that we are indeed deploying that capital efficiently and buying down risk for you on every truck roll. So I'm just curious to get your perspective on where we are with the use of data, AI, the work you've been doing at Neara, using some of the data that we provide from our inspections. I'm just curious how you think that's going and where you see the next frontiers in terms of better use of data to do smarter service.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you touched on a lot of the key points. Poles, cable inspection are both things that are top of mind for us. Recently had our system resiliency plan that was approved. You talk about data and analytics, that takes a lot of data and analytics to get that through the regulatory process. And we really needed to be able to show our regulators that we were wisely using the dollars that needed to be spent. Part of that is the collaboration that we have with Neara, and to be able to do that at scale. So we have a long-standing relationship with Osmose, really value the work that y'all are doing for us. What we see the Neara platform doing is helping to accelerate that so that we can identify the highest areas of risk in our network and give the biggest impact to our customers as we make the investment. So using the digital twin really allows us to analyze our almost 30,000 miles of overhead transmission in a way that's much faster and much more efficient. We're starting to integrate into that some of the pole loading analysis and see how we can identify the highest and most risky poles to be replaced. Another key part of that is around where is the most accessible part on our network, because accessibility is one of the things that slows down a restoration. So when our folks have to go into backyards and they have to replace poles, that's where we can really combine the two outputs from each one of your companies to find where is the most risky place and hardest to replace location on our system, then assess the health of that asset and wisely replace them. And so, Ron, that's something that we've been very focused on, and your team has been helping us to do that. But be interested to hear kind of how you feel we are doing in terms of the adoption of the technology and the scaling of the technology.
It's a good question. I think every organization is different about how they consume and use the technology, right? I think getting value from it is the most important part. As an organization, we're not particularly motivated by money. We're motivated by how effectively an organization is able to answer the problems that they have in front of them. The thing I love about your organization is we're able to take content that we get from companies like Osmose. And we're able to put it into a living system that gives you the information that you need to make educated decisions, right? What we saw 5 years ago was something that was missing inside of the industry, and that's a living representation of your equipment, right? That allows you to go through and take simulations and use that to understand questions like, did the work we do actually address the problem we were trying to solve? How do we use that to project what we do into the future? So I think the relationship is fantastic between the three organizations. It feels like, we benefit from what everyone else is doing, and ultimately it helps you operate better as an organization, which is really our goal.
It absolutely does. And I think you touched on another key point there around understanding the assets from the Osmose perspective, but then also being able to see the world around our assets and how they're going to be interacted with, whether that's trees, whether that's vegetation. It could be buildings that are near our facilities. And so the combination of both an asset-focused approach plus the LiDAR giving us kind of the wide-angle view, those two things together, and also being empowered by machine learning and other AI technologies, is really helping us to be really efficient with our efforts to increase reliability and resiliency.
Eric, it seems to me the I'm a great believer that customers actually don't want service. They want the outcome from the service. So, I think utilities like yourself are awash with data, right? But it's what you do with the data. What are the insights you create with the data? What I see from Neara is that speed of getting to the insight, because you have a model that you're seeing what changed in the model from maybe the last inspection, right? That's what I see is that, and then you're able to target what's the right piece of equipment to work on to would you agree with that as a kind of a principle of, because we would say you were already doing a lot of the right things, and we, in fact, we would look at CenterPoint as an example of what we would think every utility should be doing, but here you are still trying to improve on it. And I think in my mind, it's that speed of getting to the right piece of equipment so you bite on your risk every time you roll a truck. Is that the way you kind of see the Neara?
Absolutely.
Supplement to what we were already doing, Fab?
Absolutely. We've talked about in the past that if we had to do field inspections of a lot of the locations, we're talking years in order to accomplish that versus minutes of running model simulations and being able to identify some of the same opportunities on the network. The other piece of it is just being able to report that back to the public. And so it's also speed and communication. So there's speed in doing the work, but we also need to be able to quickly translate that into something that the public can understand. They understand where are we working, why are we working there, what they should expect. And then on the opposite side, and this is one of the things that we're really focused on right now, is completing that life cycle. So we want to be able to hold the people accountable that are doing the work on our behalf. And again, that's where the LiDAR and the post-inspections give us that opportunity. So not only are we using it to trend data that you have given us over the years, bake that into machine learning models and then leverage the larger data sets, but now we're also looking at how to do QA, QC once we have instituted these mitigations on the network. That's truly where the customer value piece comes in, because it's one thing for us to identify the right locations, but even once we identify the right locations, the work still has to be done correctly for the customers to get the value. And so that's where we can close that gap and then work with each of y'all to ensure that we're getting the quality that our customers deserve.
Well, look, I personally, Rob, I'm sure you would agree. I personally want to applaud CenterPoint, who we would say already has a best-in-class program, to be trying to make that program even better. And, I'm going to tell you a little story. Mid last year, we were onboarding a new VP of sales. So typically we bring people out in the field and we show them what we do. And so we were in your district, actually unbeknownst to you. And we were going down a line of poles, trying to find a reject. And these are 50-year-old poles that were all virtually at 100% strength still after 50 years of life. So, that's a testament to what you have been doing historically. And I think with the advent of what you're doing now with Neara, you're going to have an even better program. So I think the people living in your district should feel really good about your stewardship and the fact that you're continuing to advance. So I want to applaud you guys for that.
Really appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate the partnership as well.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe one last comment from you, Rob. When you think about all the technology that's coming down the pipe, drones and AI and, with what we're doing together and with progressive customers like CenterPoint, what do you see as the next kind of technology evolution for this idea of smarter service or targeted service, to where every time we roll a truck, we're really doing something meaningful?
I think it's more in the automation about how we can remove steps in that process. One of the things I'd like to highlight that Eric said is the speed to an answer, right? I've heard great metrics from you about how we've been able to reduce the time to get from point A to point B, but I don't think we're ever through that process. So the faster we're able to produce an artifact that can be used in, the benefit of customers, in the benefit of safety, how we can do that to improve our ability to define and mitigate the impacts of storms and other types of resiliency events, I think is really important. So, a great example of that is something like automated design, right? The more you can take an engineer's time and move it from the collection of information and put it into the area of analyzing it, more they can look at what the outcomes are that have to come from that. So what do we consider in that? The impact of a storm or the impact of wildfire. When you're just doing design, you're almost trying to get to a checkbox at the end of it that I've completed that process. If you can automate the first portion of that, you actually get to a point where the engineer can spend a lot of time trying to determine what's the best fit for the organization. And that really mitigates the downstream problems that we face after things are constructed. So, I'm super keen to see what kind of automation is going to come out in the industry over the next few years. And I think it's something that collectively we're going to be able to work as a group.
Okay, great. Well, look, thanks for taking the time. I'm personally fascinated by that last topic as somebody who didn't have a laptop for the first 2 years of my career. The advancement of technology that we've seen is just immense, and I think it's only going to accelerate from here. So really appreciate you guys taking the time today to share your views, Chris.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.